We live in a world more connected than ever, yet somehow more divided than ever before. We have faster messages, louder opinions, and endless platforms, but fewer real conversations. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Communities don't collapse because people disagree. They collapse when people stop caring. Kindness is not soft. Kindness is not weakness. Kindness is the most underestimated force in leadership, culture, and human connection. Because every strong community, every movement that lasts, was never built on power, fear, or control. It was built on trust, and trust is built through kindness. Kindness is the moment someone feels seen instead of ignored, heard instead of dismissed, valued instead of tolerated. And when people feel they matter, they show up differently. They protect each other. They contribute more. They stay. This is not about being nice. This is about survival. Because in a world pulling us apart, kindness is the decision that pulls us back together. And the future will belong to those who choose to lead with it on purpose. Community doesn't begin with buildings, systems, or titles. It begins the moment a person feels they matter. Men, in particular, are often taught to measure their value by what they produce, provide, or protect, not by how they connect. From a young age, many men learn to stand alone, to solve problems silently, to carry weight without showing strain. When a community is designed only around structure and performance, men show up physically, but remain emotionally absent, because nothing in the environment signals that their inner world is welcome. Men don't withdraw because they don't care. They withdraw because they don't feel safe enough to be seen. From a man's perspective, vulnerability can feel like risk, and risk feels irresponsible when others depend on you. From a woman's perspective, that silence can look like distance, disinterest, or emotional unavailability. The gap isn't a lack of love. It's a lack of understanding about what safety looks like for each side. Kindness is the signal that lowers defenses before it changes behavior. When men are met with respect instead of judgment, appreciation instead of expectation, they open up in ways structure alone can never demand. When women offer empathy without trying to fix and men respond without retreating, something shifts. Community forms not because rules exist, but because people feel allowed to show up as they are. Trust isn't given, it's earned. And the first currency of trust is kindness. For men, kindness is often misunderstood. Many are conditioned to see it as a weakness, a sign that they are yielding control or losing authority. Yet, the very acts of patience, attention, and consideration that we label as kindness are what allow men to feel safe enough to step out of their protective shells. When a man experiences consistent kindness from those around him, he doesn't just comply, he engages, he invests. He begins to take emotional risks that structure or rules could never require. Women often view trust through the lens of consistency and emotional alignment, needing to see that intentions match actions over time. For men, trust often hinges on competence and reliability. But when kindness becomes the bridge between intention and action, the psychological barriers that keep men from opening up begin to dissolve. Men start to share their thoughts, their fears, their doubts, because they recognize that the environment is not threatening. Kindness signals that mistakes will not be met with ridicule, that vulnerability will not be weaponized. It allows men to reconcile strength with sensitivity. In that space, trust grows organically. It is not demanded, it is earned, and from it, every connection, collaboration, and sense of belonging can emerge naturally. People don't commit to buildings, organizations, or titles. They commit to the way they are treated. For men, loyalty is often misunderstood. Society teaches them to deliver results, provide solutions, and maintain appearances of strength. But underneath that exterior, men are constantly scanning their environment for cues of respect, recognition, and acceptance. If they feel dismissed, ignored, or undervalued, their engagement disappears. Not because they don't care, but because they don't see a reason to invest their energy where it won't be honored. From a woman's perspective, commitment is often judged by presence and participation. But for men, emotional safety and acknowledgement are far more powerful motivators than rules or rewards. Women may notice withdrawal and interpret it as disinterest, while men perceive the same environment as hostile or unrewarding. This gap can silently erode trust and connection, leaving both parties frustrated and disconnected. Treatment is not about grand gestures. It is about small, consistent acts of recognition and respect, a simple acknowledgement of effort, an empathetic response to struggle, or a space to express concerns without judgment signals that a man is seen and valued. When these cues are present, men don't just show up physically, they commit fully, bringing their strengths, loyalty, and presence to the community in ways that formal structures alone could never inspire. Small acts done consistently are far more powerful than grand gestures done once. For men, the world often signals that significance comes from big achievements, bold moves, and visible victories. Yet when it comes to building real connection, men respond more deeply to repeated, thoughtful actions that show they are seen, understood, and appreciated. A single compliment or moment of recognition can be fleeting, but when small acts, listening without judgment, acknowledging effort, of offering help without being asked, happen over and over, they create a psychological safety net that allows men to lower their defenses and engage fully. Women often interpret consistency as reliability and care. They notice when someone is present, attentive, and responsive, even in minor ways. Men may not articulate the emotional impact of these moments, but they internalize them, letting them reinforce trust and loyalty. The repeated kindness signals that the environment is safe, that vulnerability is allowed, and that effort is recognized. Not just performance, but intention. When both men and women commit to small acts of thoughtfulness, a rhythm is established. Men begin to step into roles of deeper responsibility and emotional presence, and women feel supported and respected. The repetition of these actions lays the foundation for relationships that endure challenges, misunderstandings, and conflict, forming bonds that are not only strong, but resilient. Division doesn't appear overnight. It grows quietly in the absence of empathy. For men, the pressure to appear strong, self-reliant, and unemotional creates invisible walls between them and the people around them. Society rewards stoicism and action, not reflection or vulnerability, which makes it easy for misunderstandings to fester. When a man feels that his struggles, doubts, or emotions will be dismissed or ridiculed, he retreats, not out of defiance, but out of self-preservation. Without empathy to bridge that gap, NCE widens and connections weaken. From a woman's perspective, empathy is often expressed through listening, understanding, and validating feelings. When these cues are absent, she may feel isolated or unsupported, interpreting silence or withdrawal as indifference or rejection. Men, on the other hand, may misread impatience or criticism as personal attacks, reinforcing their instinct to close off. This mismatch in emotional communication creates friction, erodes trust, and amplifies division. Empathy is not an abstract concept. It is a practical tool that shapes behavior and strengthens communities. When women offer space for men to express themselves without judgment, men are more likely to engage authentically and reciprocate care. When men pause to consider the perspectives of those around them, even small acts of understanding prevent conflict from taking root. In environments where empathy is prioritized, men feel safe enough to show vulnerability, women feel acknowledged, and the invisible threads that hold a community together are reinforced daily, resisting the subtle forces that would otherwise pull it apart. The strongest communities are never formed by chance. They are built by those who decide to care before anything else. For men, caring is often complicated by years of social conditioning that equate vulnerability with weakness. Many men are taught to prioritize action over emotion, results over relationships, and self-reliance over connection. Yet the moment a man chooses to act with intentional care, whether it's listening to a concern, offering support without expectation, or simply showing up consistently, he begins to break down the invisible barriers that keep people apart. Caring first is not passive. It is a deliberate act of leadership that signals safety, trust, and belonging. Women often notice care in ways that men underestimate. Attention to small details, consistent acknowledgement, and emotional presence create a sense of security and reciprocity. When a man chooses to lead with care, women are more likely to engage openly, share insights, and invest themselves fully in the collective mission. The psychology here is simple. Men crave respect and acknowledgement for their efforts, while women seek emotional alignment and understanding. When care comes first, these needs intersect, creating a feedback loop of trust, cooperation, and loyalty that formal structures or incentives alone cannot replicate. Men who embrace caring as a choice rather than a concession discover that their influence grows exponentially. They inspire others not by authority or control, but by demonstrating that relationships matter more than transactions. Women respond to this by matching that engagement with authenticity and collaboration, reinforcing the bonds that make communities resilient. In these environments, care is not an occasional gesture. It is a strategy, a mindset, and a habit. Each act of genuine concern, repeated over time, compounds into a network of connection that withstands adversity, nurtures growth, and sets a standard that others naturally follow.